the parents would trust you with their most precious thing in the world, their children, so they could come in to the service and learn about him. So he didn't just know your name, he defined your mission. And there is no service to God that is unimportant. And it makes me think about like a car engine. There isn't anything on the engine that is not important. You think about the oil plug, very cheap part, but if you lost your oil plug driving down the interstate at 80 miles an hour, you're going to be buying a new engine. Okay, everything on there is important. You can't drive with 3 wheels. The car won't work. You can't drive without a windshield. So everything is important. Every service for God is important. So God had a plan for Paul, and that plan included serving him. Okay, God has a plan for you, and that plan includes serving him. It also includes a hard truth. In verse 16, he said, "And I will show him how great things he must suffer for my name's sake." Suffering was not an accident. It was not just something that happened because Paul was serving God. It was part of the course syllabus that God had developed for Paul's life. 2 Corinthians chapter 11. Yeah, and it's kind of a long one.
Are they ministers of Christ? I speak as a fool. I am more, in labors more abundant, in stripes above measure, in prisons more frequent, in death oft. Of the Jews 5 times received I 40 stripes, save one. Thrice I beaten with rod, once I stoned, thrice suffered shipwreck. A night and a day I have been in the deep, in journeyings often, in perils of water, in perils of robbers, in perils of my own countrymen, in perils by the heathen, in perils in the city, in perils in the wilderness, in perils in the sea, in perils among false brethren, in weariness and painfulness, in watchings often, in hunger and thirst, in fastings often, in cold and nakedness.
Well, Paul endured a lot in serving God, more than I could imagine. It didn't just kind of happen. God had said before any of this happened, and God had known before Paul was even born that all of this was going to happen. It was part of the syllabus. And it's not just Paul. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 12.
And all that will live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution.
Okay, so it says the word all there. It's part of the syllabus for all of us, for everyone that is faithful to God. There is going to be a time in our lives where we go through some sort of difficulty. There is going to be a health issue. You look at the prayer list back there. There are many, many people in pain on that prayer list. There are going to be maybe financial difficulties. There are going to be difficult coworkers. If you have a secular job and you're trying to be the light of the world, somebody at work is going to give you a hard time. There are going to be family members that are not saved that are going to give you a hard time for your convictions. It is going to happen. It's part of the syllabus. And that leads us to the question that many people have is why? Why does God do that or allow that? And the answer, actually, Paul is the one that wrote this in Romans chapter 5, verses 3 and 4.
And not only so, but we glory in tribulations also, knowing that tribulation worketh patience, and patience experience, and experience hope.
So it's not pointless. It's not pointless that we go through these things. It produces something in us. It produces character. It produces patience. It produces experience. And it produces hope. I think about something that I went through with work recently. And, it produced a hope that for 6 weeks, God took care of me without my job and without my paycheck. And that stretched and grew my faith and the faith of my family. So the next time that something happens, I have more faith. I have more hope because look what God has done in the past. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 10.
But the God of all grace, who hath called us unto his eternal glory by Christ Jesus, after that ye have suffered a little while, perfect, establish, and strengthen yourselves.
Okay, so suffering is for a little while. It is temporary. Okay? Dwelling with Christ in glory is eternal. God uses these temporary things like pain and suffering to strengthen and establish you and to be glorified through you, inevitably. So it's for a purpose, okay? When we go through these trials, when we go through these tribulations, it's not pointless. And I put the discussion questions on here so that I don't have to say it 3 times, because I know how that is when I'm sitting there and somebody asks a question. So, number 1, does it comfort you or does it scare you to know that God has written your days in his book before you lived them? Any thoughts on that? Mary?
Comfort, because you believe in God. It's his will.
Right?
But, and whether you